They treated my driveway like their personal VIP lounge. So I turned it into a $250 per hour trap they couldn't escape. I was sipping a black coffee on my front porch when the 4,000-pound industrial steel gate slammed shut with a motorized, earth-shaking thud, permanently trapping 5 luxury SUVs and a screaming mob of entitled mothers inside my private driveway. The heavy magnetic locks engaged with a sharp mechanical clack that echoed over the manicured lawns of my neighborhood. I didn't flinch. I just tapped the screen of my tablet, executed my Python script, and watched my custom-built, high refresh rate LED billboard blaze to life, informing them that their current hostage situation was billing them exactly $250 an hour. I work as a senior mobile architect and a 3D pipeline developer. My days are a relentless, grueling grind of compiling rendering engines, structuring multi-threaded application isolates, and designing the digital infrastructure that makes augmented reality overlays function smoothly on commercial hardware. I don't work in a sterile corporate high-rise. I work from a highly customized, heavily tech-integrated home that I bought purely for its massive, semicircular, executive driveway. It's a beautifully paved, sweeping arch of dark asphalt flanked by heavy stone pillars and a meticulously landscaped front garden. It was supposed to be my sanctuary, but my sanctuary happened to be located directly across the street from Oak Ridge Preparatory Academy. Oak Ridge is the kind of hyper-prestigious, absurdly expensive private elementary school where parents don't just drop their kids off, they engage in a daily, cutthroat automotive fashion show. And because the school's actual pickup line was a chaotic, 40-minute bottleneck of idling luxury vehicles, the local, school-run, parents decided that my private, semicircular driveway looked like the perfect, free VIP waiting lounge. It started with just one car pulling in to quickly turn around. Then, it escalated to 2 cars idling for 5 minutes. By October, it was a full-scale daily invasion. Every single weekday, starting at exactly 2:50 p.m., a fleet of massive, pristine luxury SUVs would violently swerve off the main road and onto my property. They didn't just park. They treated my driveway like a designated staging area. They revved their massive V8 engines, blasted aggressively loud podcasts through their open windows, and completely blocked my garage doors so I physically could not leave my own home to get lunch or run errands. Worse than the noise was the physical destruction. My front lawn is equipped with a heavily modified, custom-coated smart irrigation system. The sprinkler heads and moisture sensors are delicate, expensive pieces of IoT hardware embedded right along the edge of the asphalt. These massive, 3-ton vehicles would aggressively mount the curb to make room for each other, blindly crushing my sensors into shattered plastic and driving deep, muddy trenches into my meticulously manicured grass. I spent 4 weeks trying to be the reasonable neighbor. I walked out there in the sweltering afternoon heat, politely tapping on heavily tinted windows, asking them to please respect the property lines. Most of them just rolled their eyes and ignored me. But the undisputed ringleader of this automotive circus was a woman named Brenda. Brenda drove a stark white, $90,000 Range Rover that smelled aggressively of vanilla essential oils and entitlement. She wore massive designer sunglasses that covered half her face and carried herself with the terrifying, unearned confidence of someone who has never been told no in her entire adult life. After replacing my 3rd shattered irrigation sensor in a single month, I walked out to the driveway, stepped directly in front of her idling behemoth, and forced her to roll down her window. The heat radiating off the asphalt was suffocating, and the muscles in my jaw tightened so hard I tasted a faint metallic tang of copper in the back of my throat. "You need to move this vehicle, Brenda," I stated, my voice dropping to a low, rigid register. "You are trespassing. You are destroying my lawn sensors. You are blocking my garage. Do not park on my private property again." Brenda slowly lowered her sunglasses down the bridge of her nose, looking at me like I was a piece of garbage she had scraped off the bottom of her designer heel. "Your driveway is empty, and my kids are gifted. We're helping your property value just by being seen here. Relax, it's 10 minutes. That's when the real bombshell dropped. As she rolled her window back up, completely dismissing my existence, I looked down at the edge of the asphalt. Her massive rear tire wasn't just resting on the grass, she was actively parked directly on top of my main, primary waterline pressure regulator. She hadn't just accidentally run it over. She had deliberately reversed over the curb to maximize her shade under my oak tree, systematically crushing a $200 piece of brass hardware into the mud. I didn't scream. I didn't punch her window. I turned around, walked back inside my heavily air-conditioned server room, and decided that diplomacy was officially dead. I am a pipeline developer. I do not rely on local authorities to solve my infrastructural problems. I automate solutions. I spent the next 3 weeks engineering an absolute masterpiece of hostile architecture. First, I contracted a heavy-duty masonry crew to reinforce the stone pillars at both ends of my semicircular driveway. I didn't just want gates, I wanted a fortress. I ordered 2 custom fabricated, heavy-gauge industrial steel gates. I dug 4 feet into the earth, pouring high-density concrete to anchor the hinges so deeply that a commercial tow truck couldn't rip them out without snapping its own winch. I left the entrance gate permanently swung wide open, making the driveway look incredibly inviting. But I retrofitted the exit gate with an advanced, commercial-grade induction loop sensor buried directly under the asphalt, paired with a pair of 600-pound electromagnetic deadlocks. Next came the brain of the operation. I purchased a massive, 3x5 foot, high refresh rate outdoor LED display panel. I mounted it securely to the brick facade of my garage, angling it perfectly so that anyone sitting in my driveway had an inescapable, high-definition view of it. I spent 4 sleepless nights writing a flawless, impenetrable Python script that synced directly to my home server. I mounted a 4K, infrared-capable LPR, license plate recognition, camera to the entrance pillar. I didn't just want to take photos of their cars. I wanted to establish a binding legal perimeter. I programmed the LED sign to act as a smart contract. The digital display constantly broadcasted a heavily vetted, legally airtight, commercial usage agreement, in bright, searing white text. The terms were simple. By entering the private perimeter of the driveway, the driver explicitly consented to a high-end, automated valet in storage service. The moment a vehicle's tires crossed my property line, the LPR camera snatched their plate data, ran it through an OpenCV parsing algorithm, and updated the massive LED screen in real time. It was designed to read, "Welcome, plate_ID. By remaining on this property for longer than 60 seconds, you explicitly agree to a $250 hourly storage fee. Minimum charge, $250. Payment required for exit." But a flat fee wasn't punishing enough for the hell Brenda had put me through. I wanted psychological warfare. I wanted a system that weaponized their own inevitable, entitled meltdowns. I hardwired a pair of hypersensitive, omnidirectional outdoor microphones to my porch awning, routing the audio feed directly into my server rack. I wrote a real-time audio parsing script that measured ambient decibel levels. I programmed a surge pricing algorithm, affectionately labeled in my source code as the tantrum multiplier. For every single decibel of human screaming or aggressive car honking detected by my microphones above the standard ambient noise floor, the system mathematically increased their running invoice. I coded it to display the live, fluctuating, invoice total directly on the giant LED screen for the entire school line to see. Total fee equals base rate plus decibels times minutes trapped. I finished testing the logic gates on a Tuesday night. The trap was fully armed, completely silent, and hungry. Which brings us directly to the absolute chaos of yesterday afternoon. At exactly 2:45 p.m., I poured myself a fresh cup of coffee, stepped out onto my shaded front porch, and sat down in my heavy wooden rocking chair with my control tablet resting on my lap. The sun was beating down on the asphalt, creating a shimmering wave of heat distortion across the road. The entrance gate was wide open. The LED sign was currently pitch black. At 2:48 p.m., the invasion began. Like clockwork, Brenda's stark white Range Rover aggressively swerved off the main road, completely bypassing the actual school pickup line, and rolled smoothly into my driveway. Behind her, like a parade of parasitic sheep, followed 4 other massive luxury SUVs. A silver Lexus, a blacked-out Mercedes G-Wagon, a pristine Audi Q7, and a maroon Cadillac Escalade. They pulled deep into the semicircle, stacking up bumper to bumper, completely blocking my garage and crushing my freshly repaired lawn edge. Brenda immediately killed her engine, rolling down her window to yell something to the Mercedes driver behind her. They were entirely inside the perimeter. I looked down at my tablet. The Python script recognized 5 active physical bodies in the induction zone. I tapped the screen. I executed the lockdown command. Behind the 5th car, the massive industrial entrance gate violently swung out from its recessed stone housing. It closed with a heavy, motorized whine, slamming into the magnetic catch plate with a deafening thud that physically shook the ground. The heavy steel pins forcefully locked into place. The exit gate remained completely, immovably deadlocked. 5 luxury SUVs, carrying roughly $400,000 worth of automotive hardware, were instantly boxed into a 40-foot cage of reinforced industrial steel. Brenda's head snapped around so fast I thought she might suffer whiplash. She stared at the heavy iron bars blocking her exit, and then her eyes slowly tracked to the massive, pitch-black screen mounted to my garage. I hit the second command prompt. The LED display violently blazed to life, casting a searing, hyper-bright glow across the shaded driveway. Commercial usage agreement initiated. The screen flashed in massive red letters. Then, it rapidly cycled through the license plate recognition data, pulling the specific plate ID of every single trapped vehicle. Welcome Brenda plate, what, RR 772. Welcome, SLV, Lex 401. Welcome, BLK, GW 990. You have bypassed the 60-second grace period. You have explicitly opted into the high-end valet storage protocol. A giant, neon green digital timer appeared at the top of the screen. Beneath it, a live invoice tracker materialized. It instantly ticked from $0 to $250. For about 10 seconds, the driveway was completely, utterly silent. The sheer shock of the technological violence I had just committed short-circuited their brains. They sat in their leather seats, staring at the blazing LED sign, trying to comprehend how a standard suburban driveway had just transformed into a maximum security impound lot. Then, the absolute meltdown began. The driver of the Mercedes slammed her hand on her steering wheel, laying on the horn in a frantic, unbroken wail of aggressive noise. My server instantly registered the noise. The omnidirectional microphone spiked. The Python script caught the decibel reading, ran it through the tantrum multiplier, and the LED screen immediately updated. Noise violation detected. Surge pricing activated. The invoice tracker on the giant screen ticked from $250 to $265, then to $280. Brenda threw her driver's side door open so violently it nearly dented the Lexus parked next to her. She stomped across the asphalt, her designer heels clicking aggressively against the pavement, marching directly toward my porch. Her face had contorted into a blotchy, mottled crimson mask of pure, unadulterated fury. "Open this gate right now," she screamed, pointing a trembling, manicured finger directly at my face. Her voice was shrill, completely devoid of the smug, dismissive tone she had used just weeks prior. "Are you insane? You cannot lock us in here. I have to pick up my children in 5 minutes. Open this gate or I will literally ram it down." I didn't stand up. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my black coffee, feeling the warm liquid settle in my stomach as I looked her dead in the eyes. "You are welcome to attempt to ram a 4,000-pound steel gate anchored into 4 feet of high-density concrete, Brenda," I stated, my voice completely devoid of emotion. "But I assure you, your $90,000 transmission will violently detonate before that hinge even bends. You are not a hostage. You are a customer. You explicitly ignored the digital commercial usage agreement, meaning you opted into my valet service. The exit gate will automatically open the absolute second your invoice is paid." She spun around, looking at the giant LED screen. Because she was actively screaming at me, the decibel meter was completely redlined. The massive digital invoice was ticking up in real time. $310, $345, $390. "This is kidnapping," she shrieked, her voice echoing off the brick facade of my house. The other mothers were now piling out of their vehicles, pacing like trapped animals, yelling over each other in a chaotic symphony of pure entitlement. "You are holding us hostage. I am calling the police. I am going to have you arrested for false imprisonment." "Please do," I whispered, gesturing lazily toward her phone. "I find law enforcement to be incredibly helpful in mediating contract disputes." She frantically ripped her pristine iPhone out of her designer purse and dialed 911, screaming into the receiver that a deranged tech psychopath had barricaded her inside a cage. For the next 15 agonizing minutes, the 5 mothers completely lost their minds. They honked their horns. They kicked the heavy steel bars of the gate. They screamed at the LED screen. And every single time they threw a tantrum, the outdoor microphones captured the audio, fed it into the algorithm, and the digital price tag violently spiked. The entire school pickup line across the street was at a dead standstill. Dozens of other parents had rolled their windows down, completely ignoring their own children, actively filming the spectacle on their phones. My driveway had become a viral amphitheater. At exactly 3:15 p.m., the wail of police sirens pierced the suburban air. A heavy, armored patrol SUV aggressively hopped the curb and parked horizontally across the road, blocking traffic. A seasoned, heavy-set police sergeant stepped out of the vehicle, his hand resting casually on his utility belt. He took one look at the 5 luxury vehicles packed into the steel cage, glanced up at the massive, blazing LED billboard displaying an invoice of over $400, and let out a long, exhausted sigh. Brenda practically threw herself at the steel bars of the entrance gate, weeping absolute, manufactured crocodile tears. tears. "Officer, you have to arrest him," she sobbed, gripping the iron rods like a Victorian prisoner. "He trapped us. We just pulled in to safely turn around, and he slammed the gates shut. He's extorting us. He's a lunatic." The sergeant didn't draw a weapon. He didn't yell. He slowly walked up my front walkway, bypassed the weeping mothers entirely, and approached my porch. "All right, sir. Do you want to explain why you have 5 women locked in a driveway zoo?" the sergeant asked, his tone exhausted but professional. I stood up, holding my tablet out toward him. "Officer," I said calmly, maintaining absolute, respectful eye contact. "This isn't a kidnapping. It's a high-end, automated valet and property protection service. They opted in the moment they ignored the digital contract." I tapped the screen, pulling up the high-resolution, time-stamped footage from my LPR camera. I showed the sergeant the video from 20 minutes ago. The video clearly showed the massive LED screen brightly displaying the commercial usage agreement, in full, legible text as the gate stood wide open. It showed Brenda's Range Rover pausing directly in front of the sign, her face clearly visible through the windshield as she read the warning, before deliberately accelerating past the threshold and crushing my lawn edge. The sergeant watched the footage twice. He looked at the shattered plastic irrigation sensors buried in the mud under Brenda's rear tire. He looked back at the LED billboard, which was currently displaying an invoice of $450 due to Brenda's relentless screaming. The sergeant turned around, walking slowly back to the steel bars where Brenda was eagerly awaiting my arrest. The legal checkmate was absolute. "Ma'am," the sergeant said, his voice hard and entirely unsympathetic. "I just reviewed the high-definition security footage. The terms of access were explicitly displayed before you entered the property. You chose to drive past the warning, and in doing so, you deliberately damaged his irrigation hardware. This is a civil contract on private property. In this jurisdiction, a property owner has a right to retain trespassing vehicles for unpaid commercial parking services." Brenda's jaw physically unhinged. The color completely drained from her face, leaving her looking like a terrified ghost behind her designer sunglasses. "You can't be serious," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "You're taking his side." "I am enforcing the law, ma'am," the sergeant barked, his patience completely evaporating. "You have 2 choices. Either you take out your phone, scan the QR code on that giant screen, and pay the man his storage fee to open the gate. Or, I step back to my cruiser, I write you a criminal citation for destruction of private property and criminal trespass, and I call a commercial flatbed to physically drag your vehicle out of here, which will cost you a hell of a lot more than $400. The silence that followed was the most beautiful, pure sound I have ever experienced in my entire life. Brenda realized she was completely, utterly beaten. The police weren't going to save her. Her entitlement couldn't override an airtight digital contract and high-resolution video evidence. Her hands trembling violently, Brenda pulled her phone back out. She aimed her camera at the massive QR code displayed on the LED screen. A payment portal popped up on her screen. I watched from my porch as she furiously typed in her Apple Pay credentials. My server chimed. A massive green checkmark appeared on the LED billboard. "Payment received, $450. Have a great day, Brenda." The heavy electromagnetic lock on the exit gate snapped open with a loud, satisfying click. The steel gate slowly swung outward, creating a narrow escape path. Brenda didn't say a single word. She sprinted back to her Range Rover, threw it into drive, and aggressively peeled out of my driveway, the tires squealing against the hot asphalt as she fled the scene in absolute disgrace. The other 4 mothers, realizing they had absolutely zero legal recourse, didn't even attempt to argue. One by one, they shamefully walked up to the edge of the driveway, scanned the QR code, and paid their respective fees. Because they hadn't screamed quite as loudly as Brenda, their surge pricing was slightly lower. In exactly 22 minutes of being trapped in my driveway, the SUV squad paid me a combined total of $1,850. The exit gate securely locked behind the final Cadillac Escalade, leaving my property completely empty, pristine, and beautifully quiet. The sergeant gave me a slow, respectful nod, got back into his cruiser, and drove away. But I am a 3D pipeline developer, and I don't just keep the money, I immortalize the victory. I didn't spend that $1,800 on new sprinklers. I used the money to upgrade my server hardware. I took the high-resolution security footage of the incident, imported it into my rendering engine, and used my animation skills to create a highly stylized, cinematic, Wall of Fame video. The video features a slow-motion replay of Brenda weeping violently at the steel gate, overlaid with dynamic panoramic, neon text highlighting the exact moment she was forced to pay the $450 invoice. I now play that video on a continuous, blazing loop on the massive LED sign every single weekday, starting at exactly 2:45 p.m. The entire school pickup line watches it every single afternoon. Brenda has to sit in the public street, staring at a massive, high-definition broadcast of her absolute, humiliating defeat. It has been 14 consecutive days. Not a single tire has crossed my property line. My custom-built smart irrigation sensors remain perfectly intact, and my driveway is a peaceful, undisturbed sanctuary of dark asphalt. Am I the monster here for weaponizing a digital contract and public humiliation to violently extort a group of entitled mothers, or did they get exactly what they deserved for treating my private property like a disposable playground?
If you have made it this far and want to see more videos like this, then kindly subscribe and turn on notifications so you may never miss another story like this.